station further down. But by the 70s, people just weren't taking trains as much as they used to, so we just had this empty space full of the foundations. As we go up along Riverline Park here, you can see these stones all over. That's the old foundation of Grand Central Terminal. And straight ahead of us now we can start seeing some buildings. This one with all of the balconies here is called 235 Van Buren by the architect Ralph Johnson. Kids like to call that one the Minecraft building sometimes. It looks like something you would build in Minecraft. Us older people sometimes call it the Morse code building because the balconies look like the dots and dashes of a Morse code signal. In fact, you can translate the balconies into Morse code. It says MTRDEE over and over again. Which means nothing. That's just when you translate those particular dots and dashes. To the right of it, the smaller cream-colored building is the old Assurance and Exchange building by the Daniel Burnham Company, the first Beaux-Arts that we can see. And rising into the sky to the right of that with a statue on top, one of our finest examples of Art Deco, the architecture of the Jazz Age, the Board of Trade by Holabird and Root, who were kind of the rock stars of Art Deco. Now, the statue on top of there is Ceres, the Roman goddess of grains and agriculture. And you can also see it kind of reflected in front of it, this smaller glass building that has like what looks like a lollipop on top of it. That's an addition to the Board of Trade by Helmut Jahn. Now, one thing that postmodernists like to do is take the old styles and like make new for the 90s editions. Now, the statue Ceres, at the time that was built, that was the tallest building in Chicago, held onto that record for a good 25 years. Right underneath the statue, that pyramid structure there, that was an observation deck for years. And the observation deck space is still down there under that pyramid. They just won't let anybody in to see it anymore. Believe me, I have tried. Usually I can talk my way into about any of these places. That one I'm still working on. Now right ahead of us, rising up into the sky, this thing with a circular thing on top, a postmodernist take on Gothic architecture by Cone Peterson and Fox, the rock stars of early 90s postmodernism. This is 311 South Wacker. Now, at the time that this was built, it was the tallest building in the world that didn't have a name, just its address. And it held onto that record until just a couple of years ago when New York had to go and build a taller one at 432 Park. That gets my goat. I want that one back. But of course, right behind it, rising above all the other buildings, as sure as Kilimanjaro rises like Olympus above the Serengeti, the Sears Tower stands 1,451 feet tall. The official name is now the Willis Tower, but locals still refer to it as the Sears under penalty of torture. On a clear day from the observation deck, you can see 4 states. Today's selections are Wisconsin, Indiana, Nebraska, and New Jersey. It's always fun to see if anybody believes me about New Jersey. It's amazing how many people do. Now the 4 states you can see are Wisconsin, Indiana, Michigan. Who can think of the 4th one? It's Illinois. Kind of a trick question. But here it is rising in front of us, so it's really 9 plain black rectangles, but all bundled together by Fazlur Khan, the Einstein of structural engineering. Now, in the early 70s, 1,000-foot tall buildings were really out of style. People had decided they weren't cost effective. Fazlur Khan's style of bundled tube construction made them affordable again. Now, one single rectangle like that wouldn't really hold up to the wind very well, but having 9 of them together like that, they kind of bundle together, they strengthen each other. They are stronger together, like America. Now, it'll block our view for a second here, but that 1,451 feet tall does not include the antennas. It's a weird little quirk in architecture rules that spires count towards the overall height, antennas do not. If we included the antennas, it would be 1,700 feet tall. And if the antennas didn't do anything, if they were just there taking up space to look pretty, then it would count as a 1,700-foot tall building. But this is one of those weird little quirks, nothing we can do about it. As we go around this building here, we'll be able to see all the way up now. Last tour was disappearing into the clouds. Here you can see the sky ledge, the glass bottom observation decks they put in there a few years ago. Now, for a good 25 years, this was the tallest building in the world, which is a really long time for any building to hold on to that record. But currently, the tallest building in the world is the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. That one is 2,700 feet tall, so like all of that, plus the antennas, plus another 1,000 feet. And it's already about to lose its record at the Jeddah Tower in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, which will be 3,200 feet. And it's also, it was still the highest occupied floor in the United States for a long time. Every building that got taller than it used it just with a spire until New York built Central Park Tower, which topped out a few months ago. However, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, the Jeddah Tower in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and Central Park Tower in New York were all designed by Chicago architect Adrian Smith, so we still win! Oh. Adrian Smith's office is right down that road, and Adams Street here is named after me. Oh. Really? It's supposed to have an apostrophe. I keep telling the alderman, he keeps saying, Adam's being such a grammar snob. I'll say, no, that makes me a punctuation snob. He'll say, well, there you go. Right. It's just a thing we have, me and the alderman and me, alderman and I. Over to the left, some modernism, Gateway 2 and Gateway 1 by Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill, based on the design style of a guy named Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. We'll see one of his own buildings later. He was kind of the father of modernism. Came out of Germany between the world wars. The idea is you wanted to make as big a building as you could using as little materials as you wanted. And in a good modernist building like these, you can never see the seams, you can never see the screws. These were not designed by van der Rohe himself, but Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill were so enamored of his style that Frank Lloyd Wright used to call them the Three Blind Mice. Now, this is not one of the bridges we have to duck under. There's going to be some lower ones coming up, though, just so you know. We'll try this again. Duck!
Oh, okay.
Awesome, you guys are good at this. Most groups are not. All right, over here, the CME Group building, a commodities trading building. This place was designed in the 80s in a postmodern style with executives in mind. Because you know, every executive wants a corner office. Normally you get 4 corner offices per floor. Here between the 2 towers, you get 16 corner offices per floor. That way nobody has to feel left out and everybody gets to be a winner. Which sounds like a great setup for a joke about millennials, but it was actually for baby boomers. And I'm a couple years older than the millennials myself, but I did try avocado toast the other day. I liked it. For 12 bucks, I better have liked it. Okay, we're gonna duck on this one.
We're gonna duck everybody?
It's an action-packed job.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
And on the right, the Civic Opera Building by Graham Anderson Probst in White, 1929. Now, there's a lot of urban legends about White. This one is kind of shaped like a throne. It looks kind of like you could sit in it if you were a giant. And the real explanation is kind of mundane. It's really Samuel Insull, the builder, a utilities kingpin, knew that operas normally did not make money even if you sold every ticket. So the 2 towers on the side were supposed to be offices whose rent money would keep the opera afloat. Which was a good idea, except that it opened in November of 1929, about 3 months after the stock market crash that kicked off the Great Depression. So Insull was living up in the penthouse, but then he lost all of his money and all the money of 30,000 investors in his holding company, so he had to flee to Greece. Like you do. That's what I do when I lose 30,000 people's money, too. It worked for about an hour. On the right, a new one from Getz Partners that just went up. One thing Getz Partners is especially good at is leaving room at the bottom of their buildings to create a walkway through it. Now, the Civic Opera Building went all the way up to the water. Nowadays, you're not supposed to go all the way up to the water. You got to leave room for people to walk alongside the river like this person is doing right now. So they carved some of it out, had the whole building held up with these embraces. We have embraced the embrace. I wish I could say that was the worst joke I got, but it's not. Behind that, you'll see a little bit of 1, 2, 3 Whacker. This one here from 1986 by Ralph Johnson, same guy who did the Morse Code building. This was supposed to be a postmodern, updated for the 80s version of the Civic Opera building. Made a lot of news in 1986 because he designed it entirely with computers, which nobody was really doing yet in architecture in 1986. Oh, and the question that I get asked the most, like, it comes up a lot, enough that I would remark on it, is how many Starbucks do you have in this city anyway? This is generally considered our first one. As of last time anybody counted, I think it was 207 Starbucks in Chicago. And that's just within the Chicago city limits, too. If you count the suburbs, nobody knows how many Starbucks we have here. On the right, the Great Lakes Building by Holabird and Roche, early 20th century. Not using what we call the best and tallest possible use of the space, so it's kind of endangered. But we hope this one sticks around. It adds a splash of color right where we kind of need it. Coming up on the Lake Street Bridge, this is one where we are most definitely going to duck.
We need to duck here.
Or at least I am anyway. Don't start standing up right now, please. I hate tackling people. I've done it, but I hate doing it. And do not reach up and touch it. They never clean the underside. It's always my instinct, too, to want to reach up and touch everything. But also, as Ralph said, your finger might get stuck. The boat will keep going. By the time that boat knows to stop, your finger's a couple of blocks away.
I'm not gonna.
All right, coming up on the right, we got some postmodernism from the 80s by Cohn, Peterson, and Fox. This curving one here is called 333 Whacker, also known as the New Bean Building. This one is wins a lot of popularity contests. It's a pretty simple building, but there's a lot of subtle touches. We call this contextualism. It's got these circular vents down at the bottom that roughly match the circular vents in the next building over, another Cohn, Peterson, and Fox joint. Curves right along with the curve of the river. Of the 2 colors of glass, at least one of them usually matches matches the color of the water. And the octagon shaped support columns down below match the octagons across the river at the merchandise mart, which we'll cover later. Of course, this building is probably best known nowadays for being the building where Ferris Bueller's dad worked in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And somehow thought he was going to get home at 5:30 to like the upper North Shore suburbs. I've been saying for years, we should have a whole other movie called Ferris Bueller's Dad's Commute. There's no way he's getting there at 5:30. I know where those houses are. It'll probably have to involve like secret tunnels, possibly a wormhole, maybe the Russian mafia. Think I can clear this one, guys? I probably can, but I'm gonna duck anyway. Always better safe than losing my head. So as you get under here, first this one with the columns, that is the old Sun-Times building by Holabird and Root. Now these people walking along up there are on Upper Wacker Drive, a drive that kind of goes around